Yes, my name is David Ford. The vast majority of my career I worked in business-to-business service organisations, and for the last 25 years I've operated either at managing director level or at CEO level, so I've been running those organisations. I loved English language and literature. I loved history. I loved the arts, really. I hated maths, absolutely hated maths, which is a bit ironic really, because as a chief executive you spend the vast majority of your time reviewing figures. But latterly, as I moved from grammar school, I was a typical grammar school generic education. When I moved to university, I took more interest in the social science, sociology, psychology, really what made people tick, because that seemed to be very relevant for a career in business. Well, you can argue that it didn't. As I said, I had a typically generalist education. You were encouraged to be good at everything, and it's something that my career really is an exercise in existentialism. You know, the road not taken. So to argue that I had an education that led to a career path that was very formed would be completely untrue. I had what I consider to be an excellent education. I certainly veered towards the arts more than the sciences, and that's what I pursued as I went through education into the secondary stage of education. What I did, in fact, you could argue, was both sides of the coin. I did an HND in business studies, although that in itself was quite generic, and I did a BA in humanities. So one could not have been more general. On the one hand, I was studying psychology and sociology, but I was also studying 20th century poetry. So you could argue, well, what use was that when you became chief executive of the largest contract catering company in the world? I would argue it had all sorts of relevance, but it was something that was essentially unplanned. I never thought from the start I wanted to be a doctor or a surgeon or a lawyer or a career that had a definite vocational requirement. It was a very generalist approach to life, and I fell into different things and found some things worked and some things didn't. Well, as I said, for the vast majority of my career I've been in the service industry. And I suppose the key thing about that, first of all, no day is the same. Because in most service industries you build or you make something that people destroy. If you're in contract catering, where I spent 17 years of my life, you make food that people consume. So the next day you're starting again. If you secure buildings, you secure them, and then somebody breaks into them. So you know, it's constantly trying to build something which is ultimately destroyed. If you clean a building, people come in and mess it up. So if you work in the sort of service industries that I worked in, no 2 days were the same. That's the first thing. Secondly, and most importantly from my point of view, the product that you delivered was through people. That's what really interested me. How you motivate large groups of people who often work in small, diverse groups to produce something which is valued by your clients and by your customers and by your stakeholders. So it was the people element that was always the most interesting thing from my point of view. And I suppose that the bit of my career and the bit of my education that made sense to that would be the sociological element of it or the psychological element of it. My career started in HR. And it's quite unusual these days for someone in HR to gravitate to become a chief executive. The more typical route is through the finance side. You become finance director and then you graduate and gravitate to become managing director or CEO. That wasn't my experience. Mine was always a people-centered management experience. How can we win as a team? How can we succeed as a team? The best thing for me in business was actually seeing people that were quite low down in the ranks rise through the ranks and really achieve. I can't think of anything more enjoyable in a career than that. Well, if you take the service sector, clearly there are some vocational elements to it that you can study and can give you a background and can give you experience. For instance, if you want to go into the hotel and catering industry, you know, there's degrees in that field in hotel and catering management. But equally, you can go into those fields without any experience of that at all, as I did. So So I think the most important thing is if you've got a reasonably clear idea of what you want to do, pursue it, and if you can, get as much experience. Ally your education to experience. I mean, there's lots of degrees now that are 4 years and offer 1 year going to work in that area that you hope to work in the future. I think that's invaluable. I mean, the vast majority of the companies that I ran Regus, which is a serviced office business. I ran Gardner Merchant, which ultimately became Sodexo, which was a hospitality and catering business. I ran a pub business, and latterly I ran a facilities management business. All of those have certain vocational elements that you can learn, or where education can enhance your opportunity. But equally, for all of those businesses, if you've got drive and you've got personality, you can do really well. You can start quite low down in those industries and get to the top. There's still the American dream in those kind of industries, you know, where the farm boy can become president. And it's very real. And I've always said that, you know, give me guys and girls with drive and with personality. And if they're intelligent on top, they can rule the world. So in terms of skills, what specific things? Well, as I say, you know, against those industries, there's loads of actual specific things you can do. But I quoted in my blog, one of the best employees I ever took on was a lady with a degree in zoology from Cambridge, from Oxford, I should say, and she became my purchasing director. Now, what on earth has zoology got to do with purchasing? But I can tell you, as a purchasing director, she was outstanding. And now she's a chief executive herself. So clearly something in her background, something through her education, gave the ability to organise, to manage, to relate to people, to understand the business environment. So don't write off generalism, in my view.